What's good, everybody? This is KY, not Kai the Creative, and we're back to the fitness content. And I'm going to talk about how you shoot fitness events, group classes, and things like that. And you can do them by yourself and make some really dope content with not a lot of equipment and not a lot of time.
Let's live some RDC!
Coming for glory, we ready for war. The city's behind us, we giving you more. We ready whenever, the world is watching. The time is now, no other option, no other way. Play to win the way that we play. Destined for greatness, born to be great, ahead of the game. In front of the pack, leading the way, it's time to reign. The kingdom's here, this is our year.
Alright, so we're going to be back to another breakdown video of some of the projects that I've been shooting in the last little bit. So I had just gone to the Element CrossFit event where they had a gigantic event. There was lights, there was a DJ, there was multiple groups, there was multiple classes, there was a ton of people, and just a bunch of freak athletes. Now, I have been commissioned to go and shoot a highlight video for this particular event, and me not having shooting CrossFit a lot, or even at all, I had to think about ways that I was going to make this look, A, like a video that I shot, and B, I have to make it look good. It has to look a little bit more like a sports commercial or a sports recap for an event, so I wanted to make it look as good as possible with not knowing any of my shot list, not knowing who's going to be there, not knowing my lighting, and pretty much going in blind. Alright, so we're going to talk about what you guys all want to hear about is what gear did I use for this particular shoot. I was again on the FX3 with a 35mm G Master lens. I'd also switched at a certain point from the 24. I also switched after a little bit to the 24-70 Sigma lens, the 2.8, which I shot handheld for the rest of this video. I also had used a DJI Ronin RS2 for some of the establishing shots, and that was pretty much it. Everything else was handheld except from some of those establishing shots, just so people know where they are, so whenever someone's viewing it or they're watching the video, they know exactly what's going on and where these people are. In terms of camera settings, I shot a lot of things in 60 frames a second, a lot in 120, but the majority of the video I actually shot was in 24 frames a second. I wanted the viewer to feel like they were there, they were in the action, and it looked real life. Now, when you do things in slow motion, especially fitness, it's used as a tool to kind of emphasize emotion or anything like that. But because I wanted to use the pacing and I wanted to have a high-paced, high-energy edit, I decided I was going to use 24 frames a second and not slow a lot of things down. Also, because I've been using MusicBed, I've been using certain songs and certain tracks, a lot of it doesn't gear towards a slow motion vibe that I used to use in previous projects. So I decided I was going to go with a 24 frames a second, super handheld, make it look raw, make it feel like it's high energy, and that would hopefully entertain the audience as well as make my client happy, which it did. Alright, so in the last video I talked about lighting and what things that I needed to do to light the particular subject because we were in a controlled environment. Now, this CrossFit event, we were not in a controlled environment at all. You were pretty much at the mercy of whatever was available to you. So there was a lot of strobe lights and party lights and DJ things and stuff like that, and you had to maneuver around those things. So I didn't have a lighting package that I brought with me because it would have just gotten in the way. There were people working out on the gym floor, and I had to get my tight shots, I had to get right into the action, and me carrying around a C-stand with a giant light on it just wasn't going to cut it. You have to be able to run and gun and use whatever's available to you. So for this particular shoot, there is no lighting. Okay, so we're gonna go into the technique section of this video where we're gonna talk about 3 things that I kept in mind when I was shooting this video. Now, the first thing we're gonna talk about is backlighting. A lot of filmmakers will tell you to use the sun as your backlight, which is a reason why a lot of people shoot at golden hour. They'll use the sun as their backlight. Now, there's definitely no sun in here, but there's a lot of overhead lighting. So I shot a lot of low angle shots and a lot of shots from the actual behind the athlete. So I had a little bit of a backlight, so it gave you a more cinematic look. It looked a little bit more commercial, looked a little bit more like it was like an ESPN highlight because you had the shining lights in the background as somebody was doing an exercise, either a hang clean or a lunge or whatever the case might be. This technique I've learned from doing a project with Socialite Vodka. And when you're shooting a group fitness class, get your wide shot first, but pick on somebody. And when I mean I pick on somebody, I don't mean go up to them and chastise them or make fun of them or anything like that. But pick one person at a time after your wide shot that you're going to film a whole set of that particular exercise. Now with CrossFit, there's a lot of high intensity, high motion, high movement actions that are taking place. And it takes you a little bit out of it when you see 5 people doing it in a big wide shot. But when you get right up into the action, which I was allowed to do in this particular event, I just started picking on people one by one, and I figured, you know what, let me capture this entire set and then move on to the next person. That way, you bring people into the action, it's a little bit more intimate, it's a little bit more closer, and when you have things like hang cleans and handstand walks and things like that, it gives you a lot of high energy. It gives you the feeling that it's really high energy, whereas if you just watched everything from a wide shot, it kind of feels like you're taking out of it a little bit. So what I found was a technique that I use when I'm shooting group fitness is I obviously will get my wide shot so you know where the person is or you know where the people are, but start picking on people one by one. Capture their set and then move on to the next person. Don't get too trigger happy, don't get too shooting happy, quickly and switch between people in a very short period of time. Hold your shot. Even if you have to hold it for 10 to 12 seconds before moving to the next person, it goes a long way in your final edit. The last technique I'm going to talk about for this particular video is shooting handheld. I use this for a lot of my fitness and sports videos. One, because it feels a little bit better. I have a lot more control over where the camera's pointed at and how quickly it points to those things. And two, it's a little bit less of a cumbersome setup. If I'm using a gimbal to shoot fitness, it's not going to think as fast as me, it's not going to move as fast as I am. So if I'm doing a really crazy whip pan and I want to get it before somebody actually finishes an exercise and moves on to the next thing, I'm going to miss a heck of a lot more shots if I'm using a gimbal to shoot CrossFit. So I figured here, I'm just going to go with my original technique, and I was going to shoot everything handheld. Now, if you guys want to know more about handheld shooting, you guys can comment in the comment section down below. But for me, for fitness stuff, I will always shoot handheld majority of the time. Okay, so like every breakdown video, we're going to go into things that I wish that we could change. Now, time is not an issue here. We were there for about 5 hours. I only had to make a 1-minute edit, so I actually had a lot of content that I didn't actually need. I didn't need a ton of shots. I really just needed whatever was going to look really good for this 1-minute highlight. But what I did find is I wish I knew what the workouts were beforehand. And I think that's just as simple as asking the event coordinator or whoever's running the event. That way I could plan a little bit of shots. I could make things a little bit more story driven instead of just a montage of a bunch of clips with high intensity. I kind of wish I knew what was going on beforehand, which would help me out a little bit later on in my edit. And the last thing that I want to point out, and one of the techniques and the things I wish that I would change, is I wish I had a couple clips of like very short interviews, maybe just a line or two from one of the athletes. You got to see what they were doing. You got to see the intensity in their faces. You got to see them moving around, but you actually didn't hear anything from anybody. There's only about one line in the particular video where you actually hear anybody talking.
Let's lift some heavy shit!
I didn't really give any context in terms of the event. So I wish that I actually had pulled an athlete or two aside, which I think was a little bit more impossible because it started as soon as I got there. So as soon as I got there, everything was set up and people were already ready to go, and that was the time I was supposed to be there. But I wish, and what I hope for next time, is actually pull some people aside and get 1 or 2 lines just so I could throw them in the video as an insert shot, just to break things up and give it a better flow to that overall video at the end. That being said, this is a second breakdown of a particular project I'm working on. There is more projects that I'll be working on later on that I'm going to come quickly in here and break down some of those videos, either before they've actually been finished or while I'm editing them or when they're already finished. So if you like these type of videos, make sure you comment, like, share, subscribe, and leave any techniques or tips that you want to know in the comment section down below. This has been KY, not Kylie Creative, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.